Hey, this is Pamela Riemenschneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg Johnson, our Director of Media Development. You have started posting the stories for our January-February issue of Produce Blueprints magazine, and we'd like to kick off the new year with a look at the year ahead. What are some of the things that we're going to be focusing on?
Well, as much as we tried to get away from the annoying term new normal, we had our sources that kept talking about that. And that's what our audience wants to hear about. They want to hear about, we know what happened in 2020. How much of this stuff is going to be something we're going to have to live with? And unfortunately, a lot of predictions, especially the early half of this year, are you're going to have to live with a lot of the crap we dealt with in 2020. So that's not really good news. The good news for our readers is it'll run over the course of 2 weeks, and you'll get different segments of the supply chain at a time. And we talked to nearly 24 sources, leaders from associations, PMA, United, longtime leaders in the private business, consultants. Bruce Peterson's in there. We talked to Steve Lutz on consumer trends. We talked to Steve Grinstead on food service. It'll be an excellent series. And there will be some positive news in there, I promise.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to note on these things is we've been watching webinars, we've been reading things, we've been reading analysis, doing analysis of our own. I want to focus on now what, and not my COVID story, although I am going to tell you my COVID story here in a minute. But I like to look at the year ahead and what does this mean now?
Yeah, so that segues perfectly into what we're going to talk about next, the year behind.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of set myself up for that one. But anyway, we have Anne-Marie did the December analysis for her PMA report using IRI sales data, and we're seeing the numbers tick back up. Fresh produce in December finished out 9% ahead of year-over-year dollars, and we're just seeing a lot of these numbers. And one of the key indicators that she's looking at is number of trips to the store, which are going down, and then the share of market for fresh versus frozen and canned. And we're also seeing fresh lose a little bit of market share to frozen and canned. And you pointed out when we were chit-chatting a minute ago that part of that could be seasonal. Right now,
I think it's definitely seasonal. It is cold. It snowed in Texas.
It did. It was amazing.
They're just not getting out as much. I think this is totally cyclical, and the reading I do on the virus says that that's cyclical too. And it's just winter's terrible most places. So,
well, winter is.
You eat canned peas.
I mean, it's not too bad right here. But actually, so right now I'm actually stuck in COVID jail because one of my kids got exposed at school. So I've actually not really shopped online that much over the last 9-10 months. I do it occasionally just to check in on retailers and see how they're doing. But since we're quarantined and can't go anywhere, I ordered from H-E-B. And it was a fantastic experience, and I stocked up on all my COVID greatest hits. I got all the oranges you want, and then also reminder, bell peppers.
Oh yeah, vitamin C in there too.
Yeah, it's been a great experience, and the changes that we have from 5 years ago, even until now. I started trialing Walmart grocery as soon as they started piloting it. I happened to be in one of the markets that they piloted it very early. And the experience is seamless. I mean, you text them when you show up, you pop your trunk open. I may have had some wine in my trunk, so they had to check my ID to make sure that I was old enough to receive it. And you just drive away and they send you a thank you text and say they're going to take care of you. And you just feel like, wow, I had the opportunity to talk with Grocery Dive when they were doing their Retailer of the Year awards, and H-E-B was their top one. And that was one of the things I spoke to the writer about how H-E-B makes you feel like they actually care. And that is a tremendous point of loyalty. And consumers really appreciate it. So for us right now, while we're stuck at home, fortunately no one is sick. I've got my stocked up on my oranges here. I even got some of those fresh juice shots where you it's like a shot of vitamin D and ginger or whatever. I got one of those for everyone in the family. I had to bribe my kid to drink it because he didn't really enjoy the flavor profile.
No, well, I recommend those with vodka.
Yeah, I don't know if that defeats the purpose. Hey, hey, why not? But yeah, so since we're in COVID jail, it's been a really interesting experience to actually have to order groceries for a reason. And if you recall, way back in the day when we were talking about the start of online grocery, there was always there was the experts who said, and one of them was the business development guy for Instacart, back when no one knew what Instacart was. And he said there's two different online shoppers, and the vast majority of them are online by necessity, but we have to figure out how to make them online by convenience. And enough of my friends and family are online shoppers now, and I've heard enough of them say they're never going back. I mean, unless they actually absolutely have to go into the store. Now, obviously, that's not me. I love going into the store, but a certain percentage of people feel like the store's taking good care of them and are going to stay.
Yeah, I can't blame them. And I also think that's a regional thing. And it depends on who you're going to and what part of the country and how far away you live from stores. Uh, you know, it's all, I mean, in food, basically pizza started the whole thing when we were kids with delivery. And I found the experience a poor one all the time because
Mhm.
it was a cold experience. So I have better luck with taking back or picking it up myself. And so that fits perfectly with me personally as a retail shopper. I like going in the store. I like seeing what they have. I like being surprised. I like I like going in not planning on buying a pineapple and seeing it for $1.49 and going, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of HEB, we had two different stories this week come over across the wires where the first one was the annual Dunnhumby Retailer Performance Index, and a lot of trade media, including us, led with Amazon's ahead of HEB in this performance index. But as you mentioned it, I have a lot of trouble with some of these performance indexes and surveys pitting retailers against each other, retailers that don't even compete. When they say that Publix is America's favorite grocer or Wegmans is America's favorite grocer, somebody in Southern California goes, who?
Yeah, what are you
Um,
talking about?
yeah, and I didn't even know that HEB existed until I lived in Texas. They have since, in the last, since I moved here in 2002, expanded greatly across the state. But still, if you don't come to Texas, you can't shop at HEB. If you don't go
That's
to
right.
the Southeast,
That's right. So it's completely unfair to say Amazon is beating HEB because they're not beating them in Texas, and
no,
Texas is the only place HEB is fighting.
yeah.
So yeah, great. They beat them in Boston.
One area, though, that they did have, the other story that came by was the Glassdoor places to work. The top HEB was in the top 10 best places to work, and it was the only grocery retailer that made the top 10. A few more made the top 100, including Trader Joe's and Wegmans, which are kind of like, back and forth on which one's the flashiest retailer when we talk about best places to work. So that survey is actually by employee surveys. So they come up with their numbers based on the same questions when they ask them of employers. So when I see HEB on the best places to work, and then I see every person I know who works at HEB that I'm connected to on social media bragging about how HEB is the best places to work, I think maybe I need to get a part-time job at HEB because it sounds pretty sweet.
Something to think about.
Yeah. One of the other things that I saw come across my, news sifting. I feel like I'm a what is it, a prospector panning for news for fruit and vegetable news. And I saw something that really stuck out to me this week where Carrefour, one of the largest supermarkets in the world and one of the largest grocers in France, um, is pulling strawberries from their shelves. They have a new director of produce, or I'm not exactly sure what the title is for this person, but they have decided to not carry strawberries in their stores in France during the month of January. And it kind of made sense to me because I was talking to a friend just today who asked me, why can't I find strawberries at HEB? And I was like, well, this is actually the doldrums for the berry season. It's really tough for them to get strawberries in store. It's supply issues, and then also just quality issues. It's tough to grow strawberries in the winter.
Yeah,
But
this is
I actually did
possibly the worst
last.
month for
Yeah,
strawberries in
this
January.
is the
They're
worst one.
expensive and they're not great quality.
Yeah, yeah, and this is no knock against strawberry growers. I mean, there's some fantastic growers out there still producing strawberries, but not every buyer is going to be able to get their hands on them. So there's just a limited supply of what we can get, and this just happens to be the week that our local retailer couldn't get good strawberries in store, and then chose not to have them on the store on the shelves if they couldn't get them. I just thought it was very interesting to see a retailer take a stand and say, absolutely not, we're not going to have any of them in the store. Because I recall being in Paris last year, even though it feels like it was, 10 years ago, and I
Well, that
happened.
was last decade.
It was the last decade, that's true. This was the last day of January. We landed in Paris, and I went to Au Bar Marché, which is a swanky grocery store, and I paid like $8 or $10 for some strawberries. They were actually quite good, because I wanted to have one of my favorite, what I call hotel picnics. And it's strawberries and champagne, which was actual champagne instead of, bubbly in a can.
We're in
like
France.
and some really nice cheese from this one store, because you can fascinate a woman with cheese. You haven't seen that meme going around.
Yes.
um yeah, so I was actually had some strawberries in France in January last year, and I'm surprised that they're just not going to carry them at all. But then to hear that we're even having some trouble with having them in store here, it's not surprising, I guess.
No, my own personal experience at the local retailer was they didn't look great and they were very expensive.
So you
Whereas
picked up other ones.
whereas the raspberries and blueberries were much cheaper and they look really good.
All right, well, that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. So, Greg,